Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Yager. Welcome to SymposiumX. Today, I have a very exciting speaker next to me, Stefan Thomas.
Thank you, Rachel.
And we are so excited about your talk about web monetization. And would you like to share with the audience what is your company Coil and what is web monetization to you means?
Absolutely. So Coil is a company we founded last year. We are trying to create a better business model for the web. And as part of that, we're creating a new web standard or promoting a new web standard called web monetization. And what web monetization allows you to do is it allows browsers to pay websites as you're going around the web. And so you don't need other forms of monetization like ads or subscriptions, or at least it provides an alternative.
So we know that you produce a very popular What is Bitcoin video. So now I want to ask you, when was that produced and what is going to be the next sequel?
So the video was made in late 2010 and then the beginning of 2011. It came out in February. And we essentially wanted to explain what cryptocurrency was. And I think looking back, I mean, this is now almost 10 years ago. We ourselves didn't really know what cryptocurrency was, and I learned a lot in the 8 years after that. And so I think if I was making a sequel today, I would focus less on the currency and more on payments and kind of like how different payment networks connect together. So I think that my focus has definitely shifted since then.
Okay, that's very exciting. I heard that the French putting Bitcoin curriculum in the high school, and so I think that they may want to have this "What is Bitcoin" video in their curriculum. So that's wonderful. So what do you see about the adoption of Bitcoin in the financial services industry? I mean, there's a lot of exciting things happening, Libra and or the cryptocurrency and maybe going into a cryptocurrency war. I don't know what is going to happen. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, as formerly I was CTO at Ripple, and in that position, like that was pretty much my job, was to think about how does cryptocurrency and distributed ledger technology get into the financial system. Because Bitcoin, I think when we first started on it, it was more intended as an alternative to banks, and we didn't really think about like how do we integrate. Whereas with XRP and Ripple as a company, we were much more interested in how does it actually connect to the existing financial system. And so some of the things that we changed in order to make that possible is, if you think of Bitcoin, one of the first things you think of is mining. And mining has a number of issues with it. The most immediate is sort of the ecological impact of mining. Bitcoin, there's just a new paper published, I just saw today, I think it's from the University of Denmark. But basically, they estimated that it's 17.29 megatons of CO2 that Bitcoin releases every year. And so during our research, we essentially found that essentially mining is not required for consensus. There's been a lot of research into consensus even prior to Bitcoin, and mining is not required for consensus. What it's required for is to select essentially who gets to participate in consensus, to have a way to kind of have automatic or implicit selection of nodes. And with XRP, we decided to get rid of that and basically make it the user that decides which nodes they want to listen to. And so it's essentially the financial institutions that are participating in the network that decide who the validators are and who they want to listen to. And so the requirement for mining goes away. And not just that, it actually makes it so that you can choose better nodes. So things like being more geographically distributed, or being more trustworthy, or having better physical security in their data centers. And so as a result, XRP Ledger now has a much more distributed and much more globally diverse and much more high security and high trust set of validators than Bitcoin has. And so that's just one example, and I could go on for hours, obviously, but I think those are some of the changes that we need to see before these technologies can get into the mainstream.
It's very exciting. I don't want to steal your thunder because later you're going to talk about your big talk, right, about web monetization. But explain in simple language, what is IntelliJ? What is it all about?
Yeah, so Yeah, I kind of spent like almost a decade working on blockchains and cryptocurrency. And one of the conclusions I took away with was that there isn't ever going to be one cryptocurrency that wins or like one ledger that everyone in the world is going to use, because there are so many different countries, so many different banks and financial institutions, and so many different use cases for banking and finance and payments, that you just can't agree on one technology that serves every use case the best. And so once you make that realization, it starts to be less about how to design the best possible ledger and more how do ledgers actually connect to each other. So if I have my bank ledger in the US and you have a mobile money account in Africa, how do I actually send you money? And so that's why we started this project called IntelliJ, and it actually started as a community group at W3C, and we started to think about this problem. And what we realized over time was that the internet actually gives you a blueprint for interoperability for anything, which is, you have these different networks. You can't all connect them directly because then the number of required connections goes up quadratically. And so you need these intermediary hops. So you need some way to route across the network. And so you just, step by step, you get closer and closer to what the internet does for data. And so over the next couple of years, we basically did that research, we did that work, and we published some specs for how you would do that. And that's what the IntelliJ project has become. And so now my focus has shifted to how do we actually get IntelliJ out into the real world and get people using it.
Thank you, Stefan. So very quickly, Stefan, you're not a robot, are you? Okay, right.
Not that I know of.
All right, okay.
A robot might be programmed to say that.
Right, yeah. So I want to know the Stefan, the person, what motivates you, what drives you to come to this point where you are an innovator and you're doing something very disruptive. What drives you? Yeah, what motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because I think like I often ask myself that question. It's like, why do you do all this? And I think for me, it's like having experienced the friction in payments as a freelance web developer, both on the sending side, where I'm paying other developers or other designers that I'm working with, or on the receiving side when I'm being paid, and just so many people taking money off the top, and there's this very stark contrast between how efficient and how fast and how frictionless communication has become. So everyone gets to access the internet and they get to access information. But then you have, on the other hand, you have payments, and people don't have access to payments. Or if they do, there's all these fees and all these delays. In the US, you can still do wire transfers where it takes days to get to the destination. And so it's like, it's just a huge amount of friction in the system. And so from my perspective, that's limiting a lot of opportunity for people. So that's the thing I'm excited about to change.
So in the audience, I have some of my students here. What it takes to join your company? Can you make some advice to them?
To join or to start?
Or to start and join.
I always favor starting companies over joining companies, but I guess not everybody can do that. Otherwise, we'll all be working for ourselves. I would say that like what I look for is actually less, some special fancy degree, and more like what have you done outside of the things that your parents force you to do or that other people force you to do, and kind of what have you done out of your own initiative, because that's going to be what motivates you going forward, right? Like if it's only external motivations that drive you, then you're not going to be a great person to work with, because I'm going to constantly have to be after you and chasing you down for deadlines and things like that, and you're not going to enjoy that either. So I think for me, the biggest thing is like figuring out what motivates somebody. And when I look at a resume, that's what I'm looking for, is like, are they actually somebody that, do you care about giving more people access to payment networks, or do you care about equality, or whatever it is that drives you? So those are the things that I look for.
Thank you, Stefan. Come to SymposiumX, and you will hear about Stefan Thomas' talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.